Welcome and thank you for joining us today on the Heroes and Icons podcast. I'm your host, Greg Randolph. Please find me on the X at Greg Heroes Icons, also known as the Heroes and Icons podcast. Get updates for great shows like this and others. I'm also a featured podcaster on HoustonCityBeat.com, and that's a cool local website for happenings and local businesses here in the Houston area. So please check them out as well. If you're enjoying the show, please share it with a friend, and I appreciate you so much for doing that. I'm very pleased to present my guest today. If you're a music and a pop culture fan, this interview will surely pique your interest. My guests today are the authors of Dead Rock Stars, a novel about dead rock stars who are tasked with becoming the unforeseen guardians of humanity and preventing the collapse of civilization as we know it. Authors Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire are my guests today. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, doing great. Greg, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a good day. Sun's shining out here in Nashville, Tennessee, so we're ready to go, man.
Nice. I like it. I like it. Well, let me start with a couple of fun personal questions, then we'll obviously get into the book. Jay, this one's for you.
Okay.
What was the Garth Brooks concert in 1993 like? And then what is your favorite
Uh,
1980s movie?
okay. 1993 Garth, an 80s movie. Okay, I can work on that. I uh I I was blown away by Garth Brooks. I At that point in 93, he was kind of famous for Friends in Low Places and the dance, fairly traditional kind of 90s country music, and it was excellent. But that Standing Outside the Fire tour was kind of I don't want to say apex, but it was close to the peak of him at his power.
Yeah.
And you went to a show, and like this guy, this country singer with a cowboy hat, was like running and jumping across the stage out into the audience with this ladder that you didn't even see was there, and he was popping out of the bottom of the stage with fire shooting off. It was like George Strait meets Kiss. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a crazy kind of connection, and it blew my mind for a country artist to do that. And in some ways, Garth is the precursor to some of the stuff we've got today.
Well, he is actually a big Kiss fan, so that was his influence, I think, for a lot of the stage presentation and everything that he
It
did.
was the coolest, man. An 80s movie, man. I could go all kinds of different ways with this.
Right.
I'll tell you the first thing that popped up to my head, like a quintessential 80s movie for me. I was age 4 to age, 14 or so as far as the 80s go. And the movie The Goonies was probably one of those that is, when I think about 80s movies, it pops up straight to my head. The scene where Chunk is explaining all the bad things he's done in his life to these bad guys, and he starts talking about the movie theater and the fake throw up and all that. I can still remember, my dad just choking almost to death laughing about that. And that was that's a great fond memory for me. And that's just a great kids movie, great teen movie, coming of age, braces getting stuck together and whatnot. That's a good one.
Those are some unpleasant memories. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Um, the 80s was just kind of a crazy thing. I mean, I enjoyed the John Cusack flicks,
Oh yeah.
and then of
Say
course,
anything.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind
Nice.
of the birth of Cameron Crowe, right? Isn't that kind of where that started there, Kyle?
Yeah. Faster Times Ridgemont High was based on I think, a novel that he wrote. Uh, he was a reporter for Rolling Stone magazine, but he was really baby faced, and so a man in his early 20s could go back to high school and pretend as if he was a student, and he wrote this book about the experience he had, and that's the movie was based off that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Does it say anything his too, or am I making that up? I'm
Yeah,
Googling
he did
things right
that
now while we're
too.
talking about it.
I think that was his
Uh,
first directorial debut, Cameron Crowe.
Isn't that the scene where the last scene on that movie is where they're on the plane?
Yeah, it is. But it's where he's holding the boombox up.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
real
Boombox. Yeah.
outside her window trying to woo her back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, so Kyle, this one's for you. What is your favorite 1980s movie? And then what is the concert experience of a U2 show like?
Yeah. Man, I'm like Jay. I could go in any number of ways. I mean, just to be true to myself, my absolute favorite movie of all time is Return of the Jedi, which came out in '83. So it's clearly an '80s movie. Big Star Wars fan. So I will say that. But at the same time, man, I have a deep affection for Top Gun and Back to the Future. Any
Indiana
number of
Jones.
those. like classics. Yeah, the Indiana Jones films in the 80s. They stopped being good after the 80s, I think. But the three that came out in the
When
80s
when
were
did was
amazing.
Last Crusade like 89 or something like that? What was Last
89.
Crusade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, that was so good. So yeah, there's a bunch of them. But now for you too, uh, they are best appreciated live. I mean, their stuff, their albums are fantastic. But it's like they keep it in fourth gear in the album, and then you go to the show, and that's when they go into overdrive. That's when they get it in the high gear, as high as they can go. And it's something, man. They are really good. I'll tell you, my very first U2 show was 1997 for the Pop Mart tour, which was not their most famous tour, or it was kind of infamous in a lot of ways. But that was around, I was college freshman, and I grew up at that time, lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and they never really came to our neck of the woods. Um, but they decided to for that tour. And so me and my friends, we managed to get second row seats. I mean, it was just a miracle. So I got to see U2 from the second row for my very first U2 show. It was like if your first football game was the Super Bowl, or your first baseball game was Game 7 of the World Series or something. Like how's it ever going to get better than that? So
Was
it
was
was
Pop Mart
awesome.
the lemon? Was Pop Mart the
Yeah,
lemon?
yeah, big
The
giant. They had
giant
like
lemon?
half of a McDonald's arch and a big giant lemon that they would come out of. It would open up and a stairwell would come out. And they'd walk out to like the middle of the stadium, where they were playing, and they'd do some songs from the middle of the had a stage in the middle of the stadium. It was just really cool, but at the same time, it was a little
U2's
bit
one of those
like,
band. U2's one of those bands where you're right, Kyle. It's not just that they put it in fifth gear when they're live, but they have more opportunities to use different senses for the experience, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
visual, it's all the things. They're gifted artists when it comes to the whole package.
yeah. Yeah, they try to they play those huge stadiums or arenas, and they're like, how do we get the person who has the seat as far away from the stage as can be? How can it make it feel closer for them? So that's why they have all the accoutrement, like the extras, the screens and the props and all this sort of things, kind of to draw the audience in, make it a little closer.
Very cool. Very cool, man. I need to go see them sometime. So
And they
let's
have one more tour left in them, so you better go quick.
yeah, that's true. Let me ask, and I'll let either one of you take this one. But how did the concept of the book ultimately come about?
Well, Jay and I have been friends since 1996 when we were in college together. We met in college, and we have always bonded over pop culture, movies, books, stories, TV, all forms of entertainment. Um, and we just continue to stay connected and stay friends from college to graduate school to early in our careers. And we would constantly call one another on the phone. Just, what are you watching? What are you enjoying? What's going on? Especially, once we moved to different cities. And we just, stayed in touch. And so there'd be times we'd kind of, in a fun, sort of nerdy kind of way, we'd pitch one another stories. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And there was always, I think, a desire within us to tell our own story, to do our own thing. We've watched so many movies, we've critiqued so many movies, we've been so like, man, that was terrible. We could do better. You felt that way so often. We're like, okay, finally, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And so, I had this idea back in my head. I'd thought about it for years. And finally, I pitched it to Jay. I said, Jay, what about this idea of, what if all these famous rock stars who tragically passed too soon, what if they didn't really die? What if they faked their deaths to become secret agents and they've been protecting the world from the shadows for decades? And he kind of paused and, Jay, what did you say? What was your response?
I think I made you nervous, didn't you? Didn't I when I paused? Like you were like, oh, he's gonna hate it. Isn't that what
A
kind
little
of what
bit. I was
happened?
like, oh no, this is a bad idea. He didn't like it.
I just kind of took it all in and I was like, Kyle, I don't think that's $1 million idea. I think that's $1 billion universe. I think that is the coolest thing you've ever brought up. And it actually kind of captured me a little bit. Kyle's always had great ideas. And that one, for whatever reason, wouldn't leave me for a couple of weeks. And I ended up kind of pitching him the idea to let me write the first couple chapters and just see what happens. And then if he likes it, he can write a couple chapters and we'll see where it goes from there. And so that was kind of the birth of the Dead Rock Stars universe.
Well, how did you guys decide? I don't know how many dead rock stars, but how did you decide? Did you take the ones that were the most well known with Elvis, Hendrix, Joplin, Lennon, and so on? Is that kind of how you decided on which characters that you were going to use for the book?
Yeah, I think we kind of started with that infamous 27 Club idea. There's so many of the iconic rock stars who passed away at 27.
Right.
That's Joplin, that's Jim Morrison, that's
Mhm.
Hendrix. So many, Kurt Cobain in the 90s. And so I think we kind of wanted to start there, and then we started thinking, well, gosh, if we set it in the current day, which we started writing in 2018, a lot of these that are the most legendary, would be well too advanced in age to be, secret agents where they've got a hand-to-hand combat, or they've got to, whatever it is they got to do, sprint through a city, to stop a bomb, or so whatever it is they've got to do. That someone in their 80s probably not going to be able to pull that off real well. Except for maybe Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, he could still do it. But all
Yeah,
that to
he still got it.
say, we wanted to kind of hone in on those that are the most heroic, iconic, like the title of your podcast, those that are the ones that are the most famous. And then we decided, well, because of their age, we need to set the story in a different time period than our current day. So we set the story in 1999. So some of them are in their 50s, early 60s, but as you can see from a lot of our movie stars, Tom Cruise is 60 years old. That guy still got it.
Right.
So a 62-year-old Elvis Presley, no big deal, man. He'd still be able to fight
He can
anyone.
still he can still karate chop. We
For
also
sure.
we also had a little fun imagining. Our intent was not to make them ridiculous characters and make fun of them. It was really to celebrate them. We wanted to celebrate these people that are beloved across the world. And so to give them kind of a second life, a second chance, a little bit of a interesting redemption story that's silly and fun. And we took that idea with the notion of we want to create a super team. So every good super team, let's take the A team. If we want to talk about the 80s, you got Hannibal, you got Face, you got Howling Mad Murdoch, and then you got B.A. Baracus, and they all have their things, right? Face
Right.
Man could talk anybody to anything. Hannibal was kind of the mastermind. Howling Mad Murdoch, he's your wild card, right? And B.A. Baracus, he's the jewelry man. That's how that works. And so
The muscle.
we started thinking about all these super teams, and so you start to go, okay, if this rock star were to be a secret agent, what would their thing be? And so we did some research. We spent some time truly trying to understand the person, and then think a little bit about like what they'd be like in 1999 and what their gifting and their skill set was. And, you know, uh, also Kyle and I are certified movie nerds. And so we wrote a book because we didn't know how to make a movie. And we made the book in such a way where we thought about a lot, like who would play the actors and what who would play the characters and what actors would play the characters, and what would they be like, and then what would their skill set be. And so
Right.
it was surprising as some of the DRS showed up in maybe ways that we didn't think that was going to be the case initially. And so it got wider and wider as the story went on. And the good news is there's still a lot of famous rock stars that passed away too soon that we'll get to address and maybe use in future sequels as the universe expands.
This one's for Kyle. How did you guys split up that creative control on things? So you're saying like you wrote two chapters, Jay, and Kyle, you wrote a couple, and like how did you kind of have a meeting of the minds? Like if you had like Jay, if you had a vision of what these characters were going to do, and Kyle, you had maybe an idea. How did you guys meld that to make the story happen?
Yeah, I have described it before as a creative marriage, where neither, in a marriage, neither person can always have their way. You've got to compromise, you've got to work together. And sometimes you got to go with what they want to do. Sometimes you got to go with what the other wants to do. And so I think I don't think we could have even tackled this if we didn't trust one another. We didn't trust one another's tastes. We didn't have similar ideas or mindset. And so what we did was real early on, after Jay wrote the first two chapters, I wrote the second two chapters. We were like, okay, we've got it. We've got a blueprint here for the beginning. And where do we want to take this? So we sort
Mm.
of had a very kind of general ending. This is where we want to end the story. So how do we get from A to B? And so what we would do is we'd kind of in bite-sized pieces. We didn't map out the entire book, start to finish. We mapped out maybe 4 to 6, I think max 8 chapters at a time. Made assignments. You write this chapter. You write this chapter. And a lot of times it would, if he had one chapter and I had the one after it, I would need to wait until he finished his before I could write. But that's just kind of how it started. We'd make assignments, and then we would read one another's chapter. We did a lot of it on Google Docs,
Mhm.
and so if we loved something, we'd highlight it in green. If we were like, I'm not so sure about this, we'd highlight it in yellow. If we hated something, we'd highlight it in red. We're like, no, I hate this, and then that would mean there'd be a discussion. We'd have to talk about it. But I think to answer your question most succinctly, we had a very basic idea of where we wanted to go. We did it in bite-sized pieces, and we made assignments along the way that built on the story, built on one another to get to an end goal. And again, we just trusted one another, and it was really fun. I loved when Jay would email me a chapter, or would meet in person, and we'd read chapters just to see, man, where did his creative juices take him? Where did he take the story? What funny element did he add, or that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a process, and it took us 3 years to write it, at least, maybe even into the fourth. But it was a good long process, but it was great. It was so much fun.
Well,
I'd like to, if I could add on that a little bit, Greg. I
yeah.
think everything that Kyle said is completely accurate. I think the other things that worked for our advantage is when you've watched as much movies, you've read as many fiction and fantasy books as we have. You kind of know how some of the hero's journey goes, or how some of the discovering into the world goes, and so we knew a rough idea of how the story would tell. But then there were natural giftings between the two of us that really complement each other. Add to that, we picked up on the tone, the
Mhm.
purpose, and the tone of our book pretty early. And I think that really helped kind of navigate what kind of story it was going to be. And the best part about all of this, it's fiction. We were just making stuff up. And so if we enjoyed it, we felt good about it. And that was kind of the number one goal, is we've got to be proud of what we're doing.
I'll throw this one back to Kyle. So did you guys have specific assignments, as far as, like, maybe one of you was a bigger fan of Elvis Hendricks or somebody, Lennon or Morrison? So how did you guys tackle the assignment part of it?
Yeah, we wanted to hit the right tone for these people, these truly famous people, who were real people, who had real personalities, real speech vocal patterns, who had real lives and real experiences. And so we just tackled it through a lot of research. Jay read a lot of books. He read a lot of biographies. I listened to a lot of YouTube interviews, to sort of, what word do they use a lot? What is his speech patterns like? To sort of just kind of mimic that. But there wasn't like a, you write all Lennon's lines or you write all Elvis's lines. It was more so, let's try to hit the target of who these people were. So that's somebody who is a huge fan of one of these artists and one of these famous rock stars. If they read our book, they'd go, "Oh yeah, they kind of get it. They kind of are, they understand who they were." So let's try to hit the target, but at the same time, let's understand that it's fiction. Like Jay said, it's fun, and this is an alternate sort of history. So, like, if they had not died, but they had faked their deaths and become secret agents, that they would be different from the person they were when they were, alive and a rock star. So we got to also take their character in a slightly way that we wanted to do it. But it was more so just, what does the story dictate? Where are we taking the story? Who needs to be in this chapter and why, and those sort of things. And yeah, and it just sort of, it wasn't a whole lot of planning or assignments, so to speak, apart from, like, you write this chapter, I write that chapter. We exchange chapters, we rewrite where we need to, so that when it's all said and done, every chapter he wrote, I've not totally rewritten, but I've worked through, and I feel great about it. Every chapter I wrote, he did the same thing. He rewrote things that needed to be rewritten, so that it is totally our book. And we've talked to enough people who said, yeah, I can't tell that two people wrote it. So it's pretty cool how it's all shaped and come together.
Very good. Very good. I'll throw this one back to Jay. Did you guys have any issues with any type of legal thing where there was somebody's name and likeness and all that with the theme of the overall theme of the book? Were there any issues with that?
We spent a lot of time talking about that early on. In fact, we were pretty convinced that we would be sued very quickly, and it'd be a fun experience. Be nice to be noticed, you know what I mean? But the more research we looked into everything, fiction is fiction. I mean, some dude wrote a book about Barack Obama and Joe Biden being private detectives, like while they were in the office. We spent a lot of time thinking about Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is a story of alternative history where the Manson murders took place, and where this time it's got Brad Pitt and Leo DiCaprio, and it was very interesting to think about how they use the characters and what it means when somebody passes away. Um, so you've got a lot of freedom if somebody has passed away to kind of do what you want. Add to that fiction. I mean, you can go wherever you want to go. The only thing that we had to be really careful, the very first version of our story that we wrote that we didn't publish, that we didn't put out there, it had a ton of music quotes. And you can get into a lot of trouble using music quotes. And so we talked about songs, we talked about the intention, but we tried to stay very clear from any kind of a musical quote.
Well,
And if I could add, yeah,
please.
we did talk to a lot of attorneys and said, what can we get away with here? And I don't mean that in like a trying to steal. That's not all what I mean.
Sure.
But what can we do within the bounds of legalities? We can't use their images. So if you notice on the cover of our book, there's no Elvis. There's no there's no like clear likeness to someone. There are some Easter eggs toward who people might be in the cover of our book, but not like a clear picture of Elvis. And yeah, we learned that when someone dies, you can't, not that we wanted to do this, but you can't defame the character of a dead person, because to have character, you must be alive. So, there's probably loopholes and those sort of things that, the estate could dig into if they wanted to. But like Jay said earlier, our intention is not to, profiteer or whatever. It's more like, hey, we want to tell this story. We love these people. We love their contribution to the world. And we just think it'd be fun to have them as characters, and almost to, in a sense, bring them back from the dead and let us enjoy them from a different angle, from a different perspective, and have fun with who they were, even though they're gone for real.
Our dedication on the first page of the book reads, "To everyone we've lost but still love."
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. So in a scenario like this, which is different, you have a lot of creative license then with what you're able to do and present things in a certain way, but you're not defaming them or anything else. It's an appreciation.
Yeah, and we won't spoil the book, but people may quibble, or readers may, not like every choice we decided to do with the characters, But again, we started with the idea these were real people, but we've developed them into characters for the sake of the story.
Mhm.
Someone may not like, how someone's dialogue is, or some choices that someone makes in the story. That's again where we say, hey man, this is fiction. It's a story. And again, going back to what Jay said with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's the famous scene in that movie where Brad Pitt's character fights with Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee's not really shown in the best light in that moment in the movie. And because it's just fun. It's fiction. It's not intended to say anything about who Bruce Lee was as a person. It's more about, what does this scene require? What does this say about Brad Pitt as a character, and those sort of things. And so that's kind of how we approached using real people in a story, in a fictional story.
Nice. I'll let Jay take this one. So if this were in fact a movie, if you had written a movie script, who would play these roles?
Kyle and I've spent a lot of time talking about this. I don't know that we've got any new ideas on stuff, but we had a lot of fun talking about Elvis. For me, I think I started off with Kurt Russell being Elvis because that was one of the first roles that he played. And then I got to thinking that George Clooney would probably have a lot of fun in this role because there's some things that are a little Ocean's 11 like. And then Kyle had an idea that I thought was pretty genius for Elvis.
For Elvis. Yeah, I noticed I started thinking about Robert Downey Jr. And if you notice, that guy loves to do an accent in the roles that he plays. He's doing a British accent, or he's just putting on some type of speaking in a different voice than his normal voice. And I thought, and he's so good at it. It's like, man, he's got the Iron Man, he can fight and all this stuff, but he could do the voice and it wouldn't sound like a, like making fun of Elvis's voice. He could do it in a really uh, authentic way. And man, he'd be great. Put the sideburns on him, man. He'd look
Yeah.
awesome. So Robbie Downey Jr.
We
was one that I thought for Elvis.
we thought about for Jimi Hendrix. We thought about Jamie Foxx because he's so musically talented. But then Kyle had another suggestion because he'd already played them in another movie in the last 8 or 10 years. It was Andre 3000 of Outkast. He had played Jimmy, and they have a lot of similarities. A little gray going on in Andre's hair these days, and that'd be a good pickup. Who'd we say for Lennon?
I've always thought Jude Law would be the great cast for
Yeah.
Lennon.
And then for did we say Holly Hunter for Janis Joplin?
Holly Hunter or Renee Zellweger. Renee Zellweger, I feel like, has been attached to Janis Joplin biopics forever and has never been able to. They've never been able to get across the finish line, and so I think she to fulfill that lifelong dream, this might be her only chance.
I think we're also we're movie lovers, and most of these characters have been played by people in the movies, and so for us, when it came to Jim Morrison. Kyle made some creative choices there that I thought were really interesting, purely because of our love for the 90s and particularly one actor. And so, Kyle, talk about that if you want to.
Yeah. So in the early 90s, they made a movie about the Doors, and Jim Morrison was played by Val Kilmer, who was in Top Gun, real genius, Tombstone. Man, he's just one of the
Saint.
One of the iconic 80s and 90s actors. One of my personal favorites. But Val Kilmer had, in I think 2014, was diagnosed with throat cancer, and so he now can't speak. He's very labored in his speech, and so we thought if Val could play Jim Morrison again, which he did in the Doors movie, all these years later, let's write the story in such a way where he didn't have to speak. So in our story, Jim Morrison has taken a vow of silence. And so he's in the book. He's a super important character, but he says one word in the whole book. So it's just a bit of an Easter egg, to pay homage to one of our favorite actors. But also, if my mouth to God's ear, if this became a movie, and someone could actually play the role, he could do it. He could play it again. We wrote it in a way that made him able to play it again.
Are you guys? I'm gonna digress here for just a second, because you said Kurt Russell, and that made me think of something. Are you guys baseball fans at all?
Yeah. I mean, not humongous, but definitely.
I grew up loving baseball for sure.
He did a documentary called "The Battered Bastards of Baseball." It is a great documentary, so I would highly recommend that you put it on your watch list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't he play minor league ball? Like, didn't he have like a pretty successful career as a baseball player?
He did, and his dad his dad owned that team. And I want to say it was in Seattle is where it was, but it's based on a minor league team, and how they go about making it through the season and all the trials and tribulations that minor league teams certainly have. But anyway, it's a great watch if you get a minute. I just thought of it. So
yeah, have to check.
I was a bat boy for a AAA team here in Nashville and a AA team, so I got to see some cool players roll through.
The Nashville Sounds, is that right?
The Sounds, and then for a little while it was the Nashville Express. They were the Twins AA affiliate for a while.
Okay, I think they were Oakland for a long time too, right?
Yeah,
is that right? Okay,
Oakland, Chicago. I feel like. Maybe the White Sox for a while too. I don't know. They changed. The Sounds changed a lot.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think they're Milwaukee right now. I think that's who they are right now.
They just they jump around so often, and the agreements change and all that stuff. But anyway, I thought you guys would like that. So
yeah,
absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hear we're a finalist for a potential expansion team for the MLB. I hear Nashville may be one of the cities that's getting a potential team in the next few years. That'd be pretty cool to have a MLB team here in town. So look out for that.
That'd be great, man. Let me ask you this. So if someone wanted to write, like as you guys did, their first novel from scratch, what advice would you have for them for writing the book and then going about finding a publisher?
I think the biggest thing for us, because we had full-time jobs, and obviously you can really, really not get rich writing books. I mean, that's you make,
Mhm.
I don't know, what have we made? Like $80 at this point? I don't think
Ten,
we broke even.
tens and tens of dollars.
Yes, we've made tens and tens of dollars. And so I think when you think about something that you love, I think the biggest suggestion that I would make was just is the old how you eat an elephant kind of thing. Thinking about writing 100,000 words or doing anything like that seems impossible. You just chip away at it. You take your time. You write. You let it flow out of you. You go back and let it sit for a little while, and read it and reread it, and you just start putting things together. A whiteboard was a really great thing for us. We took post-it notes and put it on the whiteboard and kind of laid out our chapters, and we were able to say, all right, this is a chapter that I think will be fun to write. So I'll take first run at it, and we take turns kind of picking chapters like we were having a draft, and it helped us quite a bit. But it was never a thing where we thought we have to do this by this time. It was more of a thing where we just said, all right, let's take a couple weeks. We made fake deadlines that helped us a lot. Um, we go, okay, you need to write this chapter in the next 2 weeks, and we'll reach out in the next 2 weeks. And so, well, for some of those things that were time sensitive, a deadline really worked for us, some kind of a
Right.
fake deadline.
Yep.
There were times where, man, it flowed. I mean, it just, and as we got more into it,
Yeah.
like those chapters wrote themselves in some ways. Like
Yeah.
as we put the pieces together, the chapters just came flying out. But there are other
Yeah.
times where we couldn't quite figure it out. We didn't know what we were doing. So we'd write something, we'd let it sit, and we'd go back and do other things. And then, Kyle and I also, we read and reread and talked about it. And we made lots of story edits before we got to a separate content editor
Right.
who really helped us clarify, some dialogue and where we're going, and then a grammar editor. And then we still sat down and read it just to make sure that we liked what we had and what we were doing. And at the end of it, we were really, really proud, and there was no elephant left.
One of the things that I've learned in the last year or two, just personal development stuff, is you have to marry the process and divorce the outcome. And it sounds like
Mm.
that's exactly what you guys did.
Yeah, I would say it a little bit differently. When it comes to art, Rick Rubin talks about this quite a bit. Famous producer, from the Beastie Boys to the Avett Brothers, all over the place. Famous guy. He talks about the importance of making art not for an audience, but for you. So
Mhm.
you make the things that you love, and if you love it, other people might love it. But like, you won't be disappointed with the outcome if you produce something that you love. And that's the only thing that should matter. It sounds really great for somebody who's, probably made millions and millions and millions of dollars, because he can say that.
Agreed.
But for us, I think it was important that what we did, and it made us laugh. We enjoyed it, and we were kind of able to create something that we're really proud of.
So I'm going to throw this one to Kyle. So how did you guys go about finding a specific publisher? And did you have any thoughts about doing a self publish, or did you have a lit agent or anything like that, or how did you guys go about that?
We tried all that. We had an agent for 2 days, and then that
Yeah,
kind of
that was an
that
exciting
relationship
2 days.
that just didn't come together, and I don't think it was meant to be. But so we thought we'd go that route. We reached out to a few others. We didn't ever really find a connection point there. So we started thinking about, do we self-publish this? And that's an option that people can take. But we really wanted someone else to publish it. We really wanted to find a publisher. And so the approach is just to ask. The old adage, the answer is no unless you ask. And so you just got to ask. You got to send letters. We had a professionally edited, and we had someone who knows what they're doing come alongside us to create the full book proposal. And we mailed that out to a lot of people. We emailed it to a lot of people. And we got a lot of no's. We got a lot of people who like, that's a great idea, but I'm not really interested. We heard a lot of people, tell us no. And then sort of just providentially, we met through a friend of a friend, we met the president and CEO of Morgan James Publishing,
Right.
who we ended up publishing with here in Nashville, Tennessee. He was in our town where we live at a conference, and we just sort of our paths crossed. He was going to be there, so we went to where he was. We were able to have a few minutes with him, and we did the whole elevator pitch, And when it was all said and done, he was like, "Guys, this is a great story. Let's get the ball rolling." And so we went through their whole process. They had an approval process. They passed our manuscript through an AI, sort of data interpreter. Does this story, according to whatever AI considers a good story, is this story a good story? And kind of click some boxes for us. And so yeah, they agreed to publish us. It was really pretty exciting. But the real truth is, you got to be persistent. You got to keep going. Met someone who was a friend of mine from many, many years ago. She has just recently published a book, and she asked us, "How many no's did you get?" And I think she told us she was on her 48th, 48
Mm-hmm.
publishers that she sought after before she finally got a yes. And now her book's coming out, maybe like Tuesday. I think it's really soon. So anyway, all that to say,
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot of
Yeah.
no's. You're going to
I
get a
also
lot of
think it
no's.
was
You
a,
just got to keep going.
I also think it was important for us. I had self-published a book and done it through Amazon, and it was a great experience. But what I found out was I can sell as many books to people that I know, and after that, it's just a little bit of a reach, and it's a long tail. And for us, we had two goals when we started. One was talking about breaking even. The other one was to get published, because we believe that this story is extremely pop culture commercial, and that a lot of people would really enjoy it. It would speak to them. And so we wanted to partner with someone that could get it in bookstores across the country, and in some parts, different pieces of the world. And Morgan James is kind of great for that. It's a small boutique publisher. They do a lot of trade books, and they do a few fiction books every year. And so we went through their process. They ran it through AI. I think Kyle talked about that, but came back, and it felt like a really good fit. And so we're excited to be able to work with them. We're excited to retain a little bit of our vision and direction of what the book is about. They were really great about that, letting us do our thing. And we got published. So we can now, at dinner parties say that we're published authors.
Were you guys disappointed that it had to go through an AI process, or that there wasn't an individual or a team that accepted it? Or were you at a point where it was like, hey, we don't care how it gets done, it's done?
I'll clarify a little bit. I don't know how every publisher's process is, because we've only done one, but for Morgan James, they have a group of 12 people that sit together in a room, and they look at the synopsis, and they look at everything, and they talk about kind of this stuff. And we submit 3 chapters. I think we even turned in our whole manuscript. So, I mean, they had the whole manuscript for almost a month. So I don't pretend to think that no one read the book. I do think that they used AI as a tool to be able to compare it to all the other books, written in this particular genre, this particular style. And so they could tell, that they had things that very quickly, in just a matter of moments, they could come back and say, here's your story arc, and here's the percentage of dialogue versus action, or this is the percentage of, what characters say what, and how do the characters differentiate, and what are their voice tones. And then they would say, here's how your book stacks up on a graph compared to the bestsellers. And so they were able to show us kind of 20 something pages of data that obviously is not at all a reason to publish, but it's just information that people that publish books are able to use and speed the process up quite a bit. And so we were fascinated by the AI report more than just kind of like grossed out by it. I think it was an interesting way to use a tool that helped them do their job better. And again, Kyle and I both spent a lot of time with AI, and as writers, as creators, we do not believe that AI can make a great story. I think they can replicate things really well, but there's no replacement for the human spark and creativity.
I 100% agree. And I'll throw this part to Kyle. Was there any brushback, for lack of a better term, once you got that report? Did you guys feel the need to change a whole lot? Elvis is only 20% action, and Hendrix is 80%. Well, that's out of balance or whatever. Did you guys feel the need to change the scope of the story and what those guys were doing once you got that report?
our experience with Morgan James is really unique in that their desire as a publisher is to publish the book that you wrote within guardrails.
Sure.
David Hancock, the founder of the publisher, he talks about, he published a book, and when he got it, he hated the cover, and the it was changed so much, and he didn't feel like it was his book. And so when he started his publisher, he was like, I want to give people the chance to write what they want to write within reason. And so when we got that report back, the one thing that I think that I remember, Jay, you may have more memories, but it said we were maybe a little too heavy on dialogue, that we needed to add a little bit more description. I think we were like 60-40, and they said most books are more like 70-30. Dialogue to description. They asked us in the editorial process to try to peel that back just a little bit. But it wasn't a mandate. It wasn't a, you have to do this. It was more so, we know from research that this is what readers are drawn to. We know from research that readers want books that are around under 100,000 words. So that's something that, we had to trim just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, to get it under that mark. And there was just a few little touch points that, like, we'd like for you to do this to sort of meet our criteria, but it wasn't anything that we felt in any way compromised our story or our vision or, what we wanted to do, and the story we wanted to tell. So we were really pleased with that process. And so we can genuinely, honestly say, when someone buys our book, when someone reads it, like, that's our story. 100%. There was no one that said, oh, you gotta change this. We don't like this story arc. We don't like this, whatever. The way this is taking place. So, I mean, it's really kind of cool to be able to say that and with confidence.
Absolutely. So there's no ghostwriter and all that stuff. It's 100% you, obviously, both of you. So,
and we did have an editor. Let me make that clear. We did have an editor who helped us tremendously, a couple of editors who helped us tremendously. But at no point was there like, we don't like this. You hear about movies, people get notes from the producers. Hey, we wanted to change the ending, or we want to do this or that. We got none of that at all. So yeah, it's totally ours. And like you said, Jay, the tone is us 100%.
Yeah. The content editor, we worked with a guy named David Webb, and he was a kindred spirit, and he got really excited about our universe. And so because of that, we could tell he believed in what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And so we trusted him a little bit more. I think he shaved about 8,000 words out of our book, which is, it's 2 chapters that he, here and there. And it's not that he did anything to change the intent of our sentences. He shortened them up a bit where they need to be shortened. He made them more precise. And so some of that, 8,000 words, it'll shave off quite a bit of dialogue, which gets you a little bit closer to that number. And some of it too, like, this is my personality and Kyle's personality. Kyle gave you the details of what Morgan James and the AI said. Mm-hmm. I just read it, skipped to the end, and was like, they loved it. And so I was like, they didn't hate it. Let's go. And so, it was a very positive process in order to kind of keep our vision, and we're really excited and proud of what came out at the end.
Excellent. Well, you guys did a great job with this, and I've really enjoyed talking to both of you today. Where can we send the listeners to support the book, and how can they follow you guys on social media?
Yeah, we have a website, deadrockstarsbook.com. You can get autographed copies of our book directly from us, which is really helpful. When you buy it from a bookstore, which we'd love for you to buy from Amazon or from Barnes & Noble or wherever you get a book, if you have a local bookstore that you like to support, they can order it and have it shipped. So it's available everywhere books are sold, but you want to get the book from us. Yeah, we've got merch, we've got shirts, we've got posters, so there's a lot of things that you can get directly from our website that you can't get anywhere else, but you can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold.
Your favorite bookstore as well.
Yeah. And you can find us on just about every platform of social media. Facebook, it's The Dead Rock Stars Book on Facebook, the DRS Book on Instagram, and DRS Book on Twitter, or X, I guess is what it's called now. But yeah, we're pretty active on there. We'd love to interact with readers or people who have thoughts. And it's been pretty fun when people tag us who, like Jay said, we've told everyone we know about this book, and everyone we know knows that we have written this book, and maybe they haven't bought it, but they know that we want them to buy it. But it's really cool when people we don't know, have no connection to, will tag us on social and say, "Hey, got your book, really loved it." So it was really cool when we have those experiences.
Are there any plans for an audiobook or anything like that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something that yeah, go ahead, Jay.
we spent a lot of time thinking about that, and there's a couple different ways you can go. Apple created some AI that'll read the book for you, and it's pretty lifelike. And I think Amazon's doing some similar things. You can. We've thought a lot about just recording it our own and being able to put it out there. That just takes time, and we're not professionals, just like we weren't professionals when we began the book journey. And so, but we've thought about doing it our own as well. And the book came out November the 14th. Is that right, Kyle?
Yeah.
And so it's been about enough time that you start pushing an audiobook. We're also thinking about doing our own podcast. Maybe you could give us some pointers, Greg. But
Yeah.
some podcasts will take a book and they'll read certain chapters again, and get some people interested in it. And so we've thought about doing some of that as well. We Part of doing a book is also being your own marketer.
Right.
The publishing company helps and they're great, but like you've got to hustle. And so our current hustle right now is being on great podcasts and with great hosts, and just like you allowing us to be on there has been huge for us. And we're excited for people to read the book. We're excited for people to share. And one of the things that can help us is if you buy the book and you read the book and you like it, go online and give us a review on Amazon or on Barnes and Noble or on Goodreads. And as Kyle kind of has a famous saying when it comes to this.
Yeah, you can be honest with us. You can tell us the truth about what you thought about the book, but man, you got to lie to the world. 5 stars, the greatest book I've ever read. You got to tell everyone that it's the best thing you've ever read.
What do you guys want the readers to get out of the book and take away from the book? It's like when you get to the end of Top Gun or something. How do you want the reader to feel after they've read the book?
This is probably a good both of us question. I'll answer and then I'll let you kind of
Okay.
add to it. I think there's any good art has multiple layers, and there are things that you can pick up on it. I think the number one thing we wanted was for people to have fun.
Yeah,
We
Right.
finished this in the middle of the pandemic, and it informed a lot of our kind of attitude when it came to that, just simply because, man, the world can be so dark. And to be able to have something that you enjoy, something that you laugh, something that, you celebrate. We wanted to do that. That was kind of our main goal. I think there's some other kind of, hidden, not quite hidden, but like just important themes that we talk about. One of them is family. Very mildly, we touch on recovery.
Right.
And some of it's just kind of doing the things you are meant to do. Anything you'd add to that, Kyle?
yeah. I think fun is number one, man. It's a fun book. It's a fast read. We've had so many people say, man, I couldn't put it down. Yeah, and when they got to the end, like I didn't want it to end. When's the sequel coming? We've heard that so much. But I also would hope that maybe this is just me, but man, I walk in a bookstore and I look at those books on the shelf and I go, how could someone do that? You asked us about this earlier. How could anybody do that? It's so hard to do. Here's the thing. Jay and I are just dudes who had a dream and wanted to write a book, and we chased it. We chased it down, and we didn't give up. And I think anyone who wants to do that can do it. Now, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of help, a lot of people to come alongside you and help you and support you,
Yeah.
and which we have needed at every turn. But you can do it. So that's what I hope. I hope people have fun, and I hope they walk away going, I could fulfill my dream as well if I just work at it.
Yeah. If these schmoes can do it, I can too.
Yeah, I think maybe Matt Damon and Ben Affleck had maybe the same thought or attitude, like we're just a couple of regular dudes and they wrote Good Will Hunting and it was the greatest thing. So
Yeah,
I assume that's kind of how you guys feel too.
Yeah. We definitely like
absolutely.
them apples. We like them apples.
Yeah.
Great flick. Great flick. Well, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you, and I apologize for the back and forth on my side with trying to get it set up, but I appreciate you hanging with me.
Oh man, no problem. It was awesome to be with you. I know we're a little bit out of your normal lane, but
Yeah,
we have written about some heroic, iconic folks, and so yeah, I think it ultimately does fit right in line with the vision of your podcast.
absolutely. Well, give me a couple of weeks or so to get the editing done, and I'm a kind of a one-man show over here, so I'll get it done here in the next couple of weeks or so, and I'll send you guys some notes on the podcasting as well if that's something that you're
Yeah,
interested in doing.
We'd love it. Thank you, Greg.
You
very
got it,
helpful.
man. All right, everyone. Thank you again for listening to the Heroes and Icons podcast with your host, Greg Randolph. Once more, thank you very much to our guests, Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire, authors of the thrilling novel Dead Rock Stars, which can be found on their website, deadrockstarsbook.com. Please follow the links in the show notes for the podcast. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. Have a great night. God bless.